Welcome to the Pipeline Podcast. Today we have just a little update from like a previous court case against Trump. It's really nothing crazy, but it is an important story, so we're gonna go over it today. It's New York Appeals Court throws out $500 million penalty against Trump, and this is in the Letitia James civil case. So let's check that out. That's what we're going to go over tonight. And if you're not familiar with what we're doing here, we do conspiracy theories and current events. And a lot of the times we find stories that are kind of a little bit of both. Those are the best ones to go over. Throughout the week, we'll do kind of smaller updates on topics like this. So if you like that kind of stuff, subscribe, check out the channel. And again, so this happened today, and it was the appeals court. They threw out the $500 million civil fraud penalty against Trump. And this was the case where he was like inflating the prices of his properties in New York. It's like a New York case. They didn't overturn the judgment. They just overturned the fine. And it was a 5-member panel for the appeals court. And I want to kind of talk about it because it wasn't just like a straight win across the board with these appeal judges. So it was 4 of the judges agreed that he was liable for fraud. So the fines don't stand, but like the verdict does. 2 judges wanted to do a whole nother trial because they said there was errors by the trial judge, Arthur Engeron. And Arthur Engeron and Letitia James are the ones that are kind of being accused of, like, as Trump calls, the witch hunt. They're the ones that like really push for this trial. Most likely just because they hate Trump. And then there was a 5th judge that argued to dismiss the case entirely. So there's only one guy that was like, oh, this whole case should just be dismissed. 2 of them did want a whole new trial though, which is interesting. So I just wanted to go into that a little bit because the article doesn't really talk about it. It's a little misleading. And then this Letitia James girl, she's the attorney general for New York, and she's faced some backlash for this case. And there are some like similar style of like you could call this like a political case or maybe like a targeted case. So we're seeing the other side of the aisle do this to her now. So she's got like 2 cases going. One is a DOJ grand jury investigation into her case against Trump. So they're looking into, was this a targeted case? Like, were they just doing it because they didn't want Trump to be president, or they just don't like him? So they're investigating that. And then she also has another case, which is like a mortgage fraud case. So she's definitely facing some backlash. And then Trump comments on it. He says Letitia James is fake and he won. And he said that the case is unlawful. And there is an argument, like a real argument to make there. We'll kind of go into it in the video. He says that other businesses were afraid to go and do business in New York because of the case. He says it was a political witch hunt. And he also says it was unprecedented, which it actually was. Trump's like one of Trump's lawyers, I think. Oh, okay. So Justice David Freeman said Letitia James shouldn't have used this like section here, section 6312, because it's like a very broad law. So it gives her the power to like broadly pursue civil fraud claims. And we're not going to read it, but I did look into it just quickly. And it just basically says that like anyone that did anything fraud related can like go to court, like they can bring charges upon it. And they were saying like the way that they used specifically that to target Trump was a little bit unprecedented, and most likely because they were just trying to stir up a scandal because Trump was running for president and just tie him up with court cases, waste his time and money and resources, and make him look bad publicly, like do all that kind of stuff. Then Friedman said, and Friedman is a justice, so he knows about the stuff, that this section 6312 had never been used this way, which does prove that, yes, in fact, this case was unprecedented. So it's most likely like targeted. And then it says the case will go to a higher court because the judges were split on liability, but they at least got rid of his fine that he had to pay, the $500 million. Letitia James, the AG, has called Trump an illegitimate president and said she'll use every area of the law, like to investigate him and do business, investigate him and his businesses. And then, yeah, here it just talks about the DOJ grand jury investigation into Letitia James for the civil fraud case against Trump. And then Letitia James is alleging that Trump is using the government to go after her politically, which is funny because that's what she did to Trump. So, like, if she's really going to claim that, she would have to admit that she went after Trump politically. When she went after Trump, it was politically motivated. And like she's not going to say that, so it's kind of funny. And then yeah, it also talks about the investigation for alleged mortgage fraud, which probably won't go anywhere. But in the meantime, it just is a story that is going to be reported on. So like she just gets bad press from it. And then she says that it's a revenge tour for Trump. So yeah, I don't really disagree. It's kind of like you did it first, you started it, so whatever. And then we have Trump's lawyers for the appeals court judgment. They were like, it violated Trump's 8th Amendment, and that's kind of how they got that fine lifted. That was like their main argument. And basically, the 8th Amendment prohibits excessive bail, fines, and cruel and unusual punishment. So they just said it was like an excessive fine. Because like $500 million for fraud. So yeah, I was just looking up the fines to see some other fraud cases in New York where there was like comparable fines. So Trump got a $500 million fine for inflating the value of his properties so he could like leverage it or sell them for more money and stuff like that. It looks like some Yellowstone Capital paid out $1 billion in a settlement for doing predatory loans. If you do want to think about, do these fines make sense? That's why I'm kind of going over it. $1 billion for predatory loans, and then $500 million for inflating your property value. And so you can kind of make a decision if you think those fines are proportional. $7.8 million for resident negligence at a nursing home and fraud. So like I do think this is worse than what Trump did. So I think like resident negligence and then like defrauding like old people is worse than inflating your property value. So I think 7.8 million here is kind of low, which makes Trump's fine look kind of high. Next, we have, it was a financial institution, $420 million fine for violating anti-money laundering and sanctions laws related to transactions in countries with Iran, Cuba, and Sudan. So this literally says they got fined $420 million for money laundering to Iran, Cuba, and Sudan, which like, yeah, I think that's a lot worse than inflating your property value. I mean, this could be like funding like terrorism or something. I guess what Trump's lawyers are trying to say is this fine was excessive. And yeah, you can make that argument, but it looks like the argument isn't strong enough for that court to throw out the case, but it's strong enough to say, okay, maybe we'll get rid of the fine. So that's kind of what happened. He inflated his business and like property values, but they're not doing that to other people. They just did it to Trump because it was like a politically motivated case. And then they talk about Russiagate too, how that scandal was like politically motivated. And there, you know, it happens all the time to Trump. He had like a bunch of lawsuits like before and after he was president. And then here's just a source on the Letitia Jane's possible mortgage fraud. So it's like another case into her. We're not really going to go into this. It's just worth, you know, bringing up that there's 2 cases against her. Trump has said before that he thinks everybody exaggerates their property value. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think it was fair, if his case entirely should get thrown out or not. The appeals court just got rid of the fine. Should they have thrown out the case, or is the fine appropriate? If you want more of the stuff, you following stories like these on the channel, definitely subscribe and check it out. And it definitely does relate to a lot of things we've already covered, like the Durham report, just with the Russiagate scandal being brought up there. And it's just another case that was made against Trump while he was running for president that it looks like might end up being a sham. I mean, at least it wasn't strong enough to get a fine. That fine got appealed, and we talk about that kind of stuff on the channel a lot, so definitely check it out and have a good night.